Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. Invite everybody to rise and join Council in singing "O Canada." Everybody, please be seated. Now, Madam Clerk, we have a declaration of pecuniary interest by Councillor Nolan, item 6 on the 2018 budgets for business improvement areas, as I believe was noted in the standing committee. And Council, we need a mover and seconder for confirmation of the minutes, unless there are corrections. Councillor Hutchins, Councillor Chisholm, all in favor? And the minutes are confirmed. We don't have any public presentations this evening, but we do have delegations. And Madam, we have 3, one on the item 5 of Community Services Committee meeting, and one on item 4, and one on item 3. Community Services was obviously a happening night. Madam Clerk, would you call the delegations?
The first delegation is Bazad Khorshidi regarding item 5 of Community Services.
Mr. Khorshidi? We don't have him here. Why don't we move to the next one? We can cycle back if he comes.
The second delegation is Olga Shushin, here to speak to item 4 of Community Services.
Ms. Shuchun, welcome. Council looks forward to your information. If you would come to the podium in the center and try to address the microphone, and that way the people at home can hear you.
Full screen that for you. Okay, and to operate, is it just the one? So you're gonna press.
Well, we can just leave the,
Okay.
because I'll be reading it.
Okay.
Is it up? Okay.
So,
Is it up on the big screen?
yeah, they're gonna put it up in a second. Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors, staff, and people in the audience. My name is Olga Shouchin, and I am here to present a little more information, and I'm hoping I can convince council to perhaps do something about our flower bed at Trafalgar Lawn Cemetery. The flower bed, which I am trying to preserve, is not just a flower bed. It is the promised flower bed. I say this because of a promise which was made to Mother. In 1992, as she was slipping away, we promised to take care of her flower bed. Our family promised her that the flower bed she started so many years ago in 1972 when Father passed would be maintained, and we have been fulfilling this promise. Mother created a flower bed with plants which were symbolic of 40 years of marriage and seeing her tend to the flower bed gave the family comfort to see that she had found a way to cope with Father's passing. So this is not just a flower bed, it is the promised flower bed. While they were alive, my parents and brother were gardeners and spent summers tending to not only a strawberry and corn patch, but to a variety of flowers which not only added beauty to where we lived, but told stories about various events and happenings, such as the time my father was courting Mother and bought her one carnation because that was all he could afford. The flower bed at Trafalgar Lawn is a continuation of their lives. For the past 46 years, many people, as well as staff, have stated that it provides beauty to the area. While visiting one day, a lady came up to me and stated how much she enjoys seeing the variety of flowers, which reminded her of the flowers she grew at her house once, but now that she had moved to an apartment, she no longer could grow the flowers. The flower bed attracts butterflies, birds, and the local chipmunk seems to enjoy scampering through it. It does not interfere with maintenance and is not a safety issue. The flower bed is on plots the family owns. So why is it that some words on paper have the power to destroy the beautiful memories our family have enjoyed and wish to continue to enjoy when we come to be with our loved ones? Cemeteries are for keeping memories alive. The flower bed keeps memories of loved ones alive and tells a story. It brings happiness and provides comfort to us. It is difficult to understand why after 46 years, our family is being told to remove the flower bed, just because somewhere during those 46 years, some bylaws were passed stating flower beds are not permitted in the flat marker area of the cemetery. I realize the council and staff have a job to do, and they are attempting to do that job. But can't that job be accomplished at the same time that our family continue to fulfill the promise made to Mother, and which provides a memorable and peaceful place to visit? In discussing our situation with an individual who deals with heritage cemeteries, she made a suggestion which seems to resolve both the issue for the town and for our family. She suggested a formal or informal memorandum of understanding between the town and our family, which would preserve the flower bed until such time that it is not kept up either because of my inability to do so or my death. I would be prepared to deposit with the town the monies that it would cost to remove the flower bed and to grass the area. Since it is not likely that it will be attended to beyond my lifetime, and since I am in deteriorating health, we are not looking too far into the future. In this manner, the town can accomplish its goal, and our family is able to maintain the flower bed and continue to fulfill our promise to Mother. To the concern by staff that the flower bed sets some sort of precedent because it does not conform to current bylaws, it is difficult to imagine that other families would not understand and appreciate that the flower bed was established 46 years ago, and out of respect for the family, the town is allowing it to exist. I am hoping the council will see the merits of a memorandum of understanding which resolves the issue of moving ahead with the approval of the bylaws while at the same time respecting our family. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your information. There's no questions. Thank you. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The next delegation is Mary McKenzie, here to speak to item 3 of the Community Services Committee meeting.
Welcome, Ms. McKenzie. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening. I'm Mary McKenzie. I'm here to speak to item 3 on the Community Services Report in reference to the Englehart Street North Remediation Project. I spoke last week at the community service meeting requesting support of the project to go forward. As a resident, we are most impacted by this issue, and being next to a residential area and posing health concerns as well. So I'd like to request here that council approve the remediation for this site this evening. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your information. Is Mr. Khorshidi here now? All right, that will conclude our delegations, and we will move to communities to consideration of the standing committee reports. Let's start with the Community Services Committee report. Councillor Grant.
I'll move all except for the outstanding report that we're getting this evening. I'm moving everything except for the report that we're getting this evening.
Except for item 6. Thank you. Councillor Chisholm.
I want to declare an interest on item 3 of the community services. I have ownership of property there, very close. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Chisholm declares a conflict on item 3 of community services. Councillor Grant's motion still needs a seconder. Councillor Lischina, thank you. Any discussion? Any separations? All in favor? The report is adopted except for item number 6. Item number 6 was the recommendation from the committee was that the presentation and information on the update to the Environmental Sustainability Plan for 2018 to 2022 and the State of Oakville's Environment Report be brought to council so that it could have a wider airing for the rest of council and the public. So with that, I think it's time to call Cindy Toth to the podium. Ms. Toth, welcome. Council and the public are very interested in your progress.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce Donna Doyle as Senior Policy Analyst with Environmental Policy Department to provide the presentation this evening on item 6, the update to the Environmental Sustainability Plan. Donna?
Welcome. I was at the Pilgrimwood EcoFest a couple of days ago, and every person I bumped into was talking about you, and it was all good.
Yeah, we have quite a good collaboration with them. They're a great school. They're doing a lot of really good work. Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Thank you all for being here tonight, and we're very excited to provide you an update on the Environmental Sustainability Plan and the State of the Environment Report. We have in the past, it's been called the Environmental Strategic Plan, but with the update, we have moved to the Environmental Sustainability Plan, which you'll hear more about, why we've done that in the presentation. So I wanted, oh, is it? Okay. So I did want to start with an update to close off the last environmental strategic plan, and just to highlight some of the progress that we made in 2017. So we did have 121 actions in total in the previous plan. Of those, 117 were closed off, which is a 97% completion rate. So they were either underway or finished. And of those, 44% involved a community partner, because that is critically important to implementing the plan. So some of the highlights, I won't go into a lot of detail because some of these you'll have perhaps heard about, but these are just a few of the key ones that we accomplished in 2017. And again, I want to stress that this is not the Environmental Policy Department. This is across the corporation and with our partners. We did get an updated tree protection bylaw to address canopy cover on private property. That includes the introduction of the Please Let's Add New Trees initiative in collaboration with Oakville Green, which helps bring backyard tree planting to a more highlighted level. We also had the 3rd Keep Calm and Adapt Fair. We also host the Energy Fair. We had, I think it was the 11th one we just hosted last year. We've got it coming up again this year. Children's Water Festival, Forest Festival, Keep Calm and Adapt, and many other events, which really engages the community in partnering with us on these initiatives. In 2017, town work also began on a detailed community energy plan. This is in collaboration with Sheridan College, Oakville Hydro, Union Gas, and Halton Region, and this is underway and is so far having quite a good buy-in from all of the partners. And as part of our Greening Harbors, a number of new outreach and education initiatives have been introduced, including this past summer, where we had over 2,000 flares recycled at events held at the Oakville and Bronte harbors. Some of these flares were sitting in people's boats. I think some of the oldest ones were from the 70s, I believe. So yeah, so it was certainly a welcome initiative. And again, in collaboration with Oakville Green, the town hosted a very big Earth Day planting event at Pili Woods on April 22nd. So what we did is remove buckthorn, which has been certainly a problem in many of our woodlands, removed those and planted over 1,000 trees and shrubs with the community to help regenerate that area. So we've sort of seen what we've accomplished. We want to see where we've been. As you can see, this is something that's actually in the Environmental Sustainability Plan. So if we look back to 2003 to 2005, where we started, we just started to introduce the ESP. We had an OMB ruling stating the need for an environmental strategic plan. And in the past 13 years, you can see this is just a very quick snapshot of the many things that the town has accomplished. We have climate change strategy. We've got an energy conservation demand management plan. We've got a biodiversity strategy that's coming. We've got an active transportation master plan. Many initiatives and programs that have been highly successful, and this plan will continue to build on those. So when we started with the ESP, the update, we wanted to see where we want it to go in the next 4 or 5 years. So we wanted to recognize and align with the wealth of existing plans, programs, and policies that we already have in place. We are also looking about the corporation shifting to a service versus a department-based model. This allows for more efficiencies and an ability to deal with more complex problems as they have become over the years. We're also shifting to a data-driven organization, and we are also trying to determine gaps and recommend solutions with this plan. As mentioned, we're also trying to respond to very complex challenges in the environment and beyond while maintaining a cohesive approach. So the first thing was to look at information from both staff, the public, our stakeholders. So we formed a core review team for both the State of the Environment and the Environmental Sustainability Plan. We interviewed staff, directors. One of the things that was very interesting about this particular approach that we took with this ESP was the fact that we know that there has been a lot of consultation that has gone on for a number of these plans. The Active Transportation Management Plan, the official plan, also the citizen survey, all touched on a lot of environmental and sustainability issues. So rather than going out again for the same sort of information, we love recycling in the Environmental Policy Department, so we looked to recycle that information and see what people were saying instead of going back again and again. So that allowed us to be a lot more strategic when we did go out to the public and our stakeholders because we had a base of information to go from and we could build on that. One thing that we also did was conduct in-depth interviews with key stakeholders. When we looked back at who we were working with for the Environmental Strategic Plan in the past, Conservation Halton, Oakville Green, Halton Region, Oakville Hydro, and Halton Environmental Network were 5 of the key ones that kept coming up. So we thought it made sense to make sure that we worked with them and approached them to see what they wanted to see and how we could better work with them. We also went to the public because that, of course, is very important. We were very successful in getting 325 responses to both in-person and online surveys. This was all factored into the eventual outcomes. And with the process, we're looking at more of a renovation versus a tear down. We had a really good platform to work from. We wanted to build on that. We knew that the State of the Environment reporting, it was helpful, but it wasn't as aligned with the ESP as we would have liked. So we've made sure that that is much more closely aligned with this update. We've also compiled and incorporated related town master plans, policies, and procedures. We did an extensive review of that. And made sure that the work that we're doing isn't repeating it, it's incorporating it and building on it. To that end, we have extensive appendix materials showing where the information came from so that people, if they want to dig into it, can refer to that at the back of the ESP. So what we came out with, it's a much more streamlined and simplified document. We're down to, I think it's about 32 pages, and it has all of the key information in that. So we've kept it easy to read and something that's very accessible to everyone. We've streamlined the vision, guiding principles, and goals. We've also done something a little different. We did have the 6 goals before. We wanted something that was going to speak a little bit more to council, to staff, to the public. So we streamed those into service areas. So we now have sustainable environments, sustainable households, sustainable government, or sustainable community, and sustainable government. So we still have the goals within those, and they're built within those 4 areas. We've also harmonized across corporate plans, and so all of the relevant master plans and policies related to each of the areas are listed in the plan. There's also a broader focus on sustainability. We've got the economic, social, cultural, environmental pillars of life in the town of Oakville, and that's infused throughout both the actions and the document. Another we think, exciting addition to this update is what we call the transformational priorities. So when we looked at what we were hearing from staff, from the public, from our stakeholders, 3 big concepts came out that we really need to be looking at as a community. Those are climate change, that's both mitigation and adaptation. That's a huge impact, both to the community and to the much broader world beyond. So we wanted to make sure that we were tracking our actions and progress on that front. Another one is ecological footprint, which is basically looking at how we use our resources and making sure that we are as efficient as we can with that. And finally is smart cities, and that's one that we had a little bit of discussion with just because of the terminology. But it is such a huge concept that is really coming up that was really important to capture. So smart cities, we did define it within the ESP. Sorry. So using technology to advance our efficiency and increase our ability to manage change and complex information, embracing technology tools that help us make smarter decisions. And again, this is something that might not be apparent or obvious to an environmental perspective, but it is because it's about using our resources efficiently, being as using data as efficiently as we can, and those are the sorts of things that can really help us be more sustainable. We also kept the action framework to simplify annual reporting. So like the last one, we do have actions that we can report on against and track progress. And we also have, as mentioned, greater collaboration with key partners. We are going to be meeting with them once a year, and there will be a much more greater role in helping us both put the report together and also to help us plan for key initiatives that we will be working on in future years. So measuring progress, that's important because everybody wants to know how we're doing. So we will continue to report annually to Council. We will be integrating the Environmental Sustainability Plan and the State of the Environment outcomes because they are closely linked. We'll also be tracking both the corporate and key partner initiatives. And we'll be able to track that progress over time by department, which we've traditionally done, but we'll also be able to do it by that transformational priority. So if we want to be able to look at what the town is doing for climate change, we have those actions indicated clearly in the plan, and we can group those together. If we want to see what we're doing to reduce our ecological footprint, we can do that. We'll also be able to do it by that thematic area as mentioned. So if we want to see what sustainable government is doing or what sustainable households mean, we can track it by that as well. And a big piece is that we've shifted to online reporting, which is much more prevalent now. So we won't be going with a full report in paper. We will be having a one-page or two-sided one-page highlights report. But the majority of our information will be online. It's streamlined, it's updated indicators tied to the ESP, and it will be complementary also to the existing data reporting that we have in place. We've done a lot of work with our corporate dashboard, World Council on Cities data, so we will be linking very closely to that as well. We've also enhanced the data management processes across departments, and we'll be doing a lot more integrated work with the data reporting. So just to give you a quick snapshot, these are the 4 themes that are in both the ESP and the SOER. Under each are the indicators for each, and again, we've streamlined those. And I will have to give a really a shout out to our communications department. They did a really great job of putting this together. Nope. I think it's because, I think it's a problem with my Microsoft Explorer. I know there we go. So on Chrome. So it's much more visual. So we've got sustainable environment, sustainable households, sustainable community and government, and just to give you a very quick overview of what the website looks like, and it looks very good on our mobile devices. So each one has an explanation, a little description that tells the story, and then we have each of the indicators. And you can get the background data, and then at the bottom, if you want it to get more information, each one has links also to our other sites on the town's website, as well as WCCD and our dashboard where there's information. Oops. And so, right there. So overall, we had really great teams that we worked with. Our consultant, Amanda Kennedy Consulting, is here today as well. She worked with Jeff Wilson, who is one of Canada's leading experts on indicators. He worked closely with us on the SOER. And so our next steps are we are going to be developing an ESP reporting template for annual council reporting. We're going to be launching the updated ESP and SOER to the public and stakeholders through our communications department, and we'll be collaborating with staff to make sure that the actions in the ESP are integrated into work plans. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there
Thank you.
questions? I agree with the committee. That was a good thing to bring here. Councillor Duddick.
No questions, just congratulations.
Thank you.
Excellent, excellent work. And as you pointed out with the communications aspect, getting it so that it's user-friendly for the layperson is paramount. So well done.
Thank you.
You know, it's an excellent report, and the expectations of our youth and their parents that we see at the schools and as we go around town really are the inspiration for staff and council to do this work. And I know that we're held in high regard across the country for this work. Last week on a TV show, we were complimented for being a world leader. So that was music to everybody's ears. And the integrated approach is highly appreciated by our residents associations. They have been very, very clear for years that they like us to integrate our planning together. So well done, and thank you very much. We need a mover and seconder for the recommendation. Councillor O'Meara, Councillor Lischina. The recommendation is as printed in the agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Now, if we turn our attention to the Administrative Services Committee, let me just ask first, Councillor Adams, are you satisfied with the information you received?
I am. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to move the standing committee agenda.
You anticipate my question. Thank you. Would your colleague be willing to second it? Councillor Knoll will second it. Any discussions, separations? All in favor? The Administrative Services Committee is adopted as well. Council, we now have some consent items. The corporate name changes item, which you've read, the process for filling a vacancy for the position of Ward 4 Town Councillor, which you've read, and the CAO Review Committee report, which you've read, which is confidential. Councillor O'Meara.
Your Worship, I'd like to separate number 2. I'd like to separate item number 2.
All right.
And happy to move the others.
Well, thank you very much. Now, if I can just find a seconder. Councillor Lischina, all those in favor? Items 1 and 3 are adopted. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, and I appreciate the work that went into this. When we discussed how we were going to set this up, it was I was of the opinion that I don't believe we should be moving outside the boundaries of political privacy, and we should not be holding a reality show as we're voting with the candidates here in the crowd here. So what I would like to do is propose an amendment to the recommendation, and the amendment would strike out the last part of number 5, to be displayed during the voting process, and strike out item number 6.
Councillor, aren't you concerned that it would be exceeding our authority to amend the Municipal Act?
Well, if that's the case, it would. But when we had this discussion last time, there was going to be discussion about how we did this. And I, from what I've understood, it's been done differently in different places. So I wasn't aware that we had to do this publicly according to the province.
But that is what our clerk's department is telling us. However, is there a seconder for the councillor's amendment? Councillor Ilger, are you seconding?
I think I would like the clerk to explain how it will be done, because I think at committee we said we'd probably go the way it was done in Mississauga, and it will not be maybe the clerk can explain it, but it won't be a show of hands, but your initial will be on the ballots, and can be seen afterwards. I know the councillors in Mississauga didn't realize that either when they voted. In fact, I talked to them and they said, "Oh no, it was secretive," and then all of a sudden it started coming out in the paper. So people can go in Mississauga and look at the ballot, see how people voted, and they're saying it has to be done that way. Maybe the clerk's department, Councillor O'Meara, can explain a little bit more on what has to be done. I agree with what you're trying to do, but I think we're bound by by provincial laws on this. So,
Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Burton. After our last meeting when we discussed this, we looked further into the legislation, and it clearly states in the Municipal Act that there should be no method of secret voting while you're in council. So we looked around in other municipalities, Mississauga being one of them, and also Milton, who had a recent appointment, and our procedure is basically mimicking both. So what we're doing is we're still going to do the vote by ballot, but the ballots will be distributed and will be made available upon request should the public wish to see. And we were planning on filling out a spreadsheet so that as the votes were gathered, it could be clearly shown who was voting in what direction. So that way we won't be contrary to any legislation.
Okay, Your Worship, I'd withdraw the amendment. If that's the law, that's the law. I apologize. I missed that sentence, but I just went right to the appendix. But I would withdraw that amendment then.
Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, Worship. Just as a point of clarification, so if this is municipal legislation, then when we appoint somebody to a committee and we do so in camera or not disclosing how we vote to appoint someone, that's because of our bylaw, the town of Oakville. Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around how we do it for some committees here, and we don't disclose how we voted one way or another for an individual, and yet in this case, it's permitted.
Councillor, for council's appointments to council's committees, every such appointment has always been public. The beginning of every term, when we make those appointments, that's a public document. It's voted in public by show of hands.
Okay, but what I'm talking about is when we get a striking committee and we have those appointments, those are on blue paper, and we don't disclose how you voted on those individuals.
But the striking committee is not council, and council votes in public on the recommendations of the striking committee.
If I could just clarify.
We'll go to the clerk
further.
now.
Sorry, when we are dealing with striking committees or appointing people to committees, there are reasons why we can go in camera according to the Municipal Act, and one of them is for dealing with personal information about an identifiable individual. So when we've got all of the resumes and what have you attached to all of the applications, that's the information that we want to protect and make sure that it's not out there for everyone. But the decision of council is always made in public.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate that.
Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just curious in terms of, is the act clear in terms of what happens in the case of a tied vote, or is it ranked balloting, or is it a runoff? Just curious, is that clear?
Madam Clerk.
The procedure that we've chosen here is basically when you get to a tie, it's by lot, where you pick out of a hat.
Anyone else? Councillor Elgar.
Can you tell us, the public, tonight just how big the roster is, since it closed off at 4:30 on Friday, so that we can see how many round-robin events of voting we possibly could have?
Well, it's not
We
really.
need there's only going to be 10 maximum present, from what I understand, including the mayor. 3 people won't be at council that night. So I'm just thinking it's going to be great. It's going to be it can't be a 5-5, 5-5s. It's got to be a 6-something, 6-4. So I just wondered, but how many applicants do we have?
I believe our information is that there's 16, sir.
16. That's what I wondered. If I don't know whether everybody's aware of that. So, and somebody has to get the majority of the votes. I see. Thank you.
All right,
It'll be entertaining.
we need a mover and seconder for item 2. Councillor Knoll, seconded by Councillor Elgar. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, Council. Now, you have a confidential consent item, and that is the Fire Services staff appointment that is before you. Is there a mover and seconder? Councillor Knoll, Councillor Grant, all in favor? And congratulations to the fire chief. I think I can reveal at this time that what council has just done is appointed Brian Durden to continue as fire chief for a 1-year extension till April 30th, 2019, with an additional 1-year extension to 2020, subject to the approval of the Commissioner of Community Services. And thank you, everybody, for that. Now, we have an item I think of great interest to everybody who cares about the quality of our roads and the amount of traffic that's from the legal department. And this is a motion having to do with the CN truck it's a rail truck hub that CN wants to build just west of the Halton Regional Dump, waste facility. Thank you. I appreciate that vote of support. With your indulgence, Council, perhaps I'll read it out. Whereas under the Municipal Act, Ontario municipalities have the authority and responsibility to advance and protect the economic, social, and environmental well-being of the municipality and the health, safety, and well-being of persons. Whereas the provincial government has designated Ontario municipalities to have responsibility to establish official plans that meet or exceed provincial standards for managing and directing physical change and effects on the social, economic, built, and natural environment. Whereas CN Rail has declared that the province of Ontario and the Halton municipalities, the City of Burlington, the town of Halton Hills, the town of Milton, and the town of Oakville, and Conservation Halton have no regulatory role whatsoever with respect to a proposed truck rail transfer development that will have a direct impact on the economic, social, and environmental well-being of the municipality and the health, safety, and well-being of residents. Whereas the Halton municipalities and Conservation Halton recognize that railways are a matter of federal jurisdiction, but assert that truck rail developments have non-rail aspects that engage multiple areas of provincial and municipal government regulatory responsibility. And whereas the Halton municipalities and Conservation Halton have commenced a court application to confirm their legitimate regulatory role in respect of the CN development, whereas CN's position that its proposed truck rail development falls exclusively under federal jurisdiction, if upheld, would create a regulatory gap that would prevent the province of Ontario, the Halton municipalities, and Conservation Halton from discharging their statutory responsibilities and leave CN Rail, a for-profit company, to self-regulate on matters that engage provincial and municipal responsibilities. And whereas irrespective of the merits of CN's proposed development, CN's interpretation of jurisdiction over this development, if upheld, would be detrimental to all provinces and municipalities that contain existing or proposed developments that engage matters of federal, provincial, and municipal regulatory interest. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Oakville endorses the principles that A, there must be a cooperative approach to all developments that engage federal, provincial, and municipal regulatory matters. B, that the existence of federal regulation over a development does not preclude and may require provincial and municipal regulation of the proposed development to avoid regulatory gaps. And 2, that the Town of Oakville calls on the Government of Ontario to join the court application of the Halton municipalities. And Council, this is so important. I would like to ask that we have a recorded vote in order to underline to the province how important we think this is. Is there discussion before I call the vote? Then, in that case, to be recorded in favor of this resolution, please rise to be named. Oh, I forgot to ask for a mover and seconder. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Grant. Got ahead of myself. Let me see if I can remember to name us. Councillor Lischina, Adams, Grant, Knoll, Elgar, Hutchins, Giddings, Chisholm, Duddock, O'Meara, and Mayor Burton. I declare the motion carried unanimously. Now, Council, we also have before you confidential discussion item C2, and that is the updated information regarding the Community Services Committee item number 3 on Englehart Street North. And I would ask now for a mover and seconder for this item. Councillor Duddock and Councillor Giddings, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Now, Madam Clerk, what of that can I say at this point?
Just that the recommendation contained in the confidential report was approved.
All right, the recommendation contained in the confidential report from the legal department has been approved. We have no advisory committee minutes this evening. You have your information items circulated electronically. You have your status of outstanding issues the same. And it's now time for notice of motion, notices of motion, new business, emergency, congratulatory, or condolence statements. And I have in front of me an array of items for this piece of the agenda. Let's see here. I will ask you to, okay, so we're going to do requests for reports in a moment. We have 2 resolutions that, for various reasons, would like to be passed tonight, and for that purpose, we will need to waive the procedure bylaw to allow us to consider it tonight instead of waiting one cycle. And Councillor Knoll is moving, Councillor O'Meara is seconding, and let's see if we have 9 votes. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, everybody. The first item is by Councillor Elgar, and Councillor Elgar, would you like to discuss your motion?
Thank you very much, Mayor Burton. This motion is kind of an unusual request, and it's kind of a neat thing what they're trying to do at this senior residence in Oakville. It's at 3136 Dundas Street West. It's the Palermo Village, and it's by the church where they've got the seniors residence. And the seniors have been working and training over the last 2 to 3 months to how to work with honeybees. And they just found out last week that it's really not allowed at this point, or there's some questions about allowing honeybees in an urban area. So with the help of staff, we've come up with a motion to at least get things going, because the idea was the honeybees were supposed to be arriving June the 1st, where they've got the apiary. So it's moved by myself, and also it's approved for seconding by my friend over from Ward 3 over there, and Councillor Giddings. So if I could, I'd like to read the motion.
I hope you will, because if
Okay.
you don't, I'll have to.
Okay, very good. I'll give it a shot.
And I will say, it's a honey of a problem.
It's a honey. Okay. Okay. The motion is that staff be directed to report on possible amendments to the property standards bylaw and lot maintenance bylaw that would allow for the keeping of an apiary at 3136 Dundas Street West, and that the owners of 3136 Dundas Street West be required to apply for relief from zoning requirements related to the keeping of an apiary at 3136 Dundas Street West within 1 month of this council date, being April the 30th, 2018, and that the applicant confirm that the location of the apiary complies with the requirements of the Ontario Bee Act by obtaining approval from OMAFRA apiary inspectors by the time any application for zoning bylaw relief is made, and further, that as in normal practice, property standards, lot maintenance, and zoning enforcement will not take place at this location with respect to the keeping of an apiary while these applications are in progress, I should say. And I thank you, everyone, and I'm hoping it's a unanimous vote to see where we go with the honeybees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Well, I'll support this. I mean, after all, I understand they keep bees on top of the Royal York Hotel. So if it's good enough for the Royal York, it's good enough for Palermo. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is carried unanimously. Now, the next item is moved by Councillor Dudek and seconded by Councillor Lischina. And Councillor Dudek, would you like to read the motion and speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This resolution is in consideration of a renewed commitment to the Greenbelt. And I'm going to read the whereases, so bear with me. Whereas the Greenbelt is an integral component of land use planning that complements the growth plan to encourage smart planning, the reduction of sprawl, protection of natural and hydrological features and agricultural lands, and whereas the Greenbelt has protected 1.8 million acres of farmland, local food supplies, the headwaters of our rivers, and important forests and wildlife habitat for over 12 years. And whereas a permanent Greenbelt is an important part of the planning for sustainable communities. And whereas there is a tremendous amount of land already planned and available in excess of the development needs of the GTA without weakening the protections provided by the Greenbelt. And whereas efforts to open the Greenbelt create the opportunity for land speculators to build expansive homes at immense profits in remote areas. And whereas opening the Greenbelt will move the urban boundary, thus creating more sprawl and increased traffic. And whereas the cost of sprawl result in increased taxes because 25% of the costs of sprawl are downloaded to our existing property taxpayers. And whereas programs like the proposed inclusionary zoning regulations will assist municipalities in advancing the supply of affordable housing stock without the need to expand the built boundary. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Oakville stand with its municipal neighbors to undertake continued action to maintain and grow the current Greenbelt, and that the province be strongly urged to extend Greenbelt protection to include the appropriate White Belt lands within the inner ring, lands that are most immediately vulnerable to development in the province, and that this resolution be distributed to the leaders of all parties represented in the legislature, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, of Greater Golden Horseshoe Municipalities, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Environmental Defence, Friends of the Greenbelt Foundation, and members of municipal leaders for the Greenbelt. And I believe I've got my colleague seconding. Just speaking briefly, with an upcoming provincial election looming, we need to remind the various stakeholders of Oakville's support of the Greenbelt Plan. We need to seize every opportunity we have to reinforce this council's position on this crucial planning issue. This resolution clearly states that we will not entertain any opening of the Greenbelt lands for future development, full stop. I would ask for your support and at the appropriate time, a recorded vote.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Councillor Lischina?
Thank you, Your Worship. I am pleased to second this motion and support this resolution because I believe it's important that we are on record as a strong voice in our municipality for the preservation of the Greenbelt for today and future generations. We know that natural undisturbed green spaces are important for environmental sustainability, but closer to my heart is health benefits of green space, including promoting physical activity, decreasing stress, which is so high in our society, as well as mitigating air pollution, noise, and heat exposure. So I do hope that Council is supportive of this resolution because the Greenbelt is for a greener future for our children, as well as preventing tax increases and more traffic jams. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lischina. Other speakers? Councillor Elgar?
No, I applaud the movers of this motion. Just a question regarding, I just want to make sure that nobody could misinterpret this, and that there is a bit of an idea sometimes by the odd person that they can kind of reconfigure the Greenbelt so they can take away land from one area and pop it up in another area where they have no intention of growth anyhow. And I just want confirmation to make sure that's not the case that we're looking at in this case.
That's right. The motion was drafted during the day and great consultation on all these points. An essential feature of the motion is the part that Councillor Dudek read about any opening up of the Greenbelt is an expansion of the urban boundary, and that is urban sprawl. So even if you add Greenbelt somewhere else, you have moved the urban boundary in order to open the Greenbelt wherever you do, and that triggers the extra traffic and the extra costs. So I believe it's quite clear.
And I appreciate that. I like the motion. I wondered if there's somewhere we could put in urban river valley system. The only reason I say that, we were the first municipality in Ontario to get that into the Greenbelt itself. That was the first expansion of the Greenbelt, to word that somehow in there, because that was a big move that took a long time.
If perhaps you'd like to craft a whereas to add that whereas Oakville was the originator of the urban river valley designation.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'll let the councillor doesn't have to read it out right now, but staff get direction to throw that in just to let them know where we stand in Oakville.
Mover and seconder, are you?
Total agreement.
Congratulations. Thank you for the improvement. Is it time to vote? I'll call the vote. To be recorded in favor of this motion, please rise to be named. Councillors Lischina, Adams, Grant, Knoll, Elgar, Hutchins, Giddings, Chisholm, Dudek, O'Meara, and Mayor Burton. I declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for your consideration of this matter. Before we leave new business, I think it's important to take a moment to remember the long service, and more importantly than that, the cheerful demeanor of Doug Gates, who was the town solicitor for so many years and who has passed after a long battle with ill health. And I want to personally remember him because he was actually my first introduction to business at the town. He had this wonderful way of calling the residents' associations together when we were facing an Ontario Municipal Board hearing down on Lakeshore, and there were 3 residents' associations there in those days, and we were we knew we wanted to fight the thing, and we wanted the town to fight it, and the town was willing to fight it, but we wanted to play a part. And but we were newbies. And so we had a certain amount of fear, uncertainty, and doubt about going before the board. And he allayed our fear, and he gave us each an arrow, and we attended at the board, and I'm happy to tell you that we even won. So, Doug, wherever you are, I'm sure you're looking down on us and smiling. I really appreciate your introduction to Municipal 101. And I would ask for a brief moment of silence in his honor. Thank you, everyone. We now come to requests for reports, and the first one is by Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Duddick. Councillor O'Meara?
Thank you, Your Worship. If it pleases you, I'll just read it and then I'll speak to it briefly. That staff report back to Council on best practice for locating seniors residential developments in the town of Oakville, and that staff also define the uses occurring within the developments and what additional infrastructure needs may be required to accommodate the needs of the residents. This really comes out of the work and the visits I've been having with the residents at Amica that opened up 4 years ago. And many of the things sort of, a lot of the seniors residents now are not what we thought they were about 20, 30 years ago. In fact, some of them can be bigger than community malls, and what happens in there, we need to start taking into consideration sort of the way that the residents are living and their lived experience. So, you know, is it best to have them on a main transportation corridor where or a particulate matter from vehicles might be larger than other places? I've heard requests for wider sidewalks. I've heard requests for increased timing at lights and for additional bus shelters. And the common thread would be that we don't need as many parking spots at seniors' residence because some of them may have left their cars behind as they moved in here. But in actual fact, what we're finding out is the impact on the local neighborhood from visitors and from supported services that go into there far exceeds that of even commercial areas that we have. So I did speak with our commissioner and with our director of planning about this, and they recognize maybe it's about time to take a little bit of a deeper look in terms of how we go out strategically looking at where the best place is for our seniors to live in these residential units should they choose, and how we can best serve them in those areas. So that's the genesis for the request for report.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions? Shall I put to vote? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Also moved by Councillor Duddick and seconded by Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Duddick? I beg your pardon. I should have read that differently. Councillor Chisholm.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to read the request report, then I'll speak to it. During 2017, confusion arose regarding the governance applying to user groups at our local senior centers relating to terms of reference, decision-making authority, governance, management roles, et cetera, et cetera. I would like to request that staff undertake a review of the practices and procedures currently in place at all senior centers in order to prepare and present a report for Council's consideration that would outline options for formalizing and updating these user group arrangements to ensure compliance with town policies and procedures, as well as creating a clear understanding of roles. I expect any prior material or significant operational decisions relating to function and authority of these groups will be deferred until this review process is completed. What is happening, Your Worship and Council, to bring Council up to speed? The seniors have operational bodies within the buildings, and they're very successful in raising money and doing enhancements for the building, and they're very good at that. And I think what's happened now that we are being so involved with our seniors operations and very sophisticated in our operations, it's time to review the governance and the MOUs that our seniors are experiencing right now, and bring them up to date and formalize them and make sure they're within the policies and working within the policies of the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Shall I put the vote? All those in favor? Oh, Councillor Duddick?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to add to what Councillor Chisholm has indicated. I think the other aspect is that, similar to what we went through with the ice allocation, the pool allocation, to seize an opportunity with a fresh pair of eyes to look at governance issues, and I dare say our colleagues in Ward 3 will maybe be experiencing similar concerns when there's some sort of ambiguity in terms of, you know, the decision-making process, and we just want to make sure everybody's treated fairly.
Well, I'll put the vote then. All those in favor? Treating fairly wins. Congratulations. Councillor Knoll, did I overlook you earlier?
I had my hand up for new business, if you don't mind. Thank you. Members of council, colleagues, staff, and members of the public, I want to bring you some news from the Oakville Public Library Board. And that is 10 nights from tonight, we will be hosting the first annual Oakville Public Library Board fundraiser. And this year we have an event called Help Yourself, the Sean McCann Story. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. Sean McCann, formerly of the Great Big Sea, is going to join us at the Oakville Centre for the Performing Arts on Thursday, May 10th, and present his captivating story about surviving abuse, battling addiction, becoming sober, and pursuing his dream of making a difference in the world. In his genuine Help Yourself performance, Sean uses a combination of music and anecdotes to portray the battles many individuals face and to shed light on the stigmas associated with mental health, encompassing an inspirational message about self-help and hope. Sean's resonating narrative allows the audience to enter a world of understanding. Feel good about joining us at this captivating performance. Funds raised from this event will help support public library programs, resources, and spaces, and in addition, a portion of the event's proceeds will be donated to SAVIS, which is the Sexual Assault and Violence Intervention Services of Halton, to aid in their work of helping survivors of violence. This is an initiative of your amazing Oakville Public Library staff, predominantly. I won't take credit for it at the board because this is entirely a staff undertaking to really do what they can and do what we can as a board to help ourselves raise additional funds to add to our collections, to add to our technology, and to add to the services of one of the most beloved services that the town of Oakville has to offer. So I'll let staff and council members know that I have tickets available tonight. They're $50 each. If members of the public are watching this on Town TV, you can buy tickets by going to oakvillecentre.ca. So thank you very much for your time and attention, and I'll be sitting here at my desk with tickets waiting for all of you.
Thank you, Councillor. You're a very good salesperson. Council, I believe we've finished our agenda. Congratulations. Thank you for your time and attention. We just need to pass the bylaws as listed in the agenda. Councillor Lischina, Councillor Knoll, all those in favor? The bylaws are adopted. It's been great working with you, and we are adjourned.